In the past few years, investors' eyes have turned to commercial to residential, and for one reason only, the profits that you can actually make from commercial to residential. Now, in this video, we're going to break down on how you can get involved and how you can actually start on your first commercial to residential project. If you're new to the channel, my name is Malkir. I'm part of Savoys Properties. We've actually been in the industry for 23 years and have a wealth of knowledge, and we'll be sharing all of this with you guys through this channel. When it comes to commercial property, it's valued very differently than residential properties. Typically, a tenanted commercial property will be valued on a yield basis on what the property actually generates. Now, this is very different from residential properties, which are valued on the area, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and the price in the area per square foot. Now, let me give you an example. If a property is generating £20,000 as a commercial property, then it will typically have a yield of somewhere between 6 to 8%, depending on the tenant, and it's very easy for an auctioneer, a valuer, to actually determine what the value would be. Whereas if a property is actually vacant, they will be valued a little bit different when it comes to commercial. It'll come down to zoning, so zone A, B, C, and in some cases you'll have zone D. What zoning actually is breaking down the value of the shop from the front window to the back. Look at this bank that we actually bought. The front section here is zone A. So this is the bit that's actually facing the high street, and this is actually going to be priced the highest per square foot on a vacant possession basis. Now, the middle section here will be valued on a zone B basis. As we step to the back, it actually gets less valuable, and this typically tends to be zone C, where it'll be a very small percentage value on it, and then going on to zone D, where there's little or in some cases zero value for that area of the commercial property. Now, typically what we would do with a zone D or a zone C area is actually convert this to residential. This basically takes the least valuable area of a commercial property and turns it into probably one of the most valuable areas of that property when it's residential use. Now, typically what you probably do in this scenario, by changing it to residential, you probably times that value by 3 or 4 times per square foot. By implementing that actual strategy, could be a game changer to your project. There's 2 reasons why commercial to residential is such an attractive strategy. Firstly, residential prices have never been as high as what they are at the moment, along with huge rental demand. The second reason is it's never been so easy to actually convert commercial spaces to residential use. Now, take your local high street, for example. Actually, do you know what? Go for a walk around your local high street. A lot of high streets up and down the country have a lot of empty units. Now, these units are actually owned by pension funds. They had big companies, typically banks, other establishments renting these at high rents. Now, as these big brands are now disappearing from the high street, pension funds are unable to actually achieve the same rents, and they're not willing to drop what they're actually earning per annum. Eventually, they have no choice but to put this property into auction or actually lower the price they actually want. This now makes it interesting for developers such as ourselves. We'll actually come in, analyze the building, probably keep a small element of the retail space where it'll actually be ideal for a startup business to actually come in, and then look at how we can repurpose the other space to the rear and the uppers. When we actually repurpose this space to a smaller retail unit, typically it removes business rates, it makes it more attractive to a startup local business to actually come in. What this is actually doing is reviving the high street by bringing in small brands, making it more of an experience to visit the high street than what we typically had over the past 20 years with the same looking high street up and down the country, with the same businesses in there, the same banks. So this is actually reviving the high street from what was actually a dire position. Now, the planning system in this country has been broken for decades. Numerous governments have been unable to fix this. Now, even when it came to ourselves, we've applied for new planning permission to actually build a new block of flats or new homes. What we found was planning departments didn't actually work as a body to actually encourage planning development. They actually worked as planning control, restricting us at every stage. Now, the government's actually realized this back in 2013. They brought in the first prior approval rights to actually change commercial to residential. And over the years, they've been adding to this because they know there's a huge shortage of properties within this country. And there's an oversupply of commercial properties that are in dire need of being revamped. Now, what we've actually heard from Michael Gove is there's going to be some new changes that are coming in. That is going to make it even more attractive to change commercial to residential use. These range from removing that upper limit on how big a building could be to convert it to residential use. And there used to be this 3-month rule that the property needed to be empty before you could actually get planning permission for it. We found this a little bit tiring because we had to get sort of stat decks from the previous occupants to put in to confirm that they actually have left and it's been vacant. Now that's going to disappear. It's going to make it a lot easier to get this planning permission within 56 days. What this is actually going to allow is making it very much more attractive to actually convert commercials to residential use. When it came to full planning permission, the council would actually approach the local neighbours, the local parish, and ask for whether they had any objections to this. And what we found was it was a lot of NIMBYs out there, which actually stands for not in my backyard. Now, what prior approval actually does is it actually has a handful of requirements that you need to fill. This is from transport, noise assessment, soil contamination, flood risk. If you can just check all these boxes off, which are very easy to do from the outset, you'd actually have a lot more certainty of getting planning permission approved within 56 days, and then you're all set to go on your development. Now, the typical question that I get asked is, Malcolm, what buildings can be converted to commercial to residential use? Now, the government actually made it a lot simpler by simplifying the classes out there. So now they have a special class called Class E, and majority of the buildings within Class C will be able to be converted to residential. So it's a lot easier for you to actually find out if that building is a Class C. And from now you have that certainty that you can actually start that process and look at converting that to residential use. Now, of course, there are a few things that you need to look out for when it comes to Class C. Article 4, this is basically a directive that the councils can put in place that can actually restrict you implementing those prior approval permitted development rights. Then you have areas of outstanding natural beauty, and you're unable to actually convert those buildings to residential use as well. But keep an eye out. There's a white paper that's out, and some of these restrictions are set to be removed. These restrictions also apply to listed buildings. Now, listed buildings are buildings where local government find they're of important significance to the community, and they put a listing on this so you're unable to actually make any changes without getting local government approval. It's very unlikely that these will fall under prior approval for those obvious reasons. The other question that I get asked is, how do you ensure the numbers stack up? Well, we tend to focus around town centres and the suburbs of London and some of the home county areas where you have high residential values, but these commercial properties are valued on a yield basis. Now, if this commercial property comes vacant, it's going to be valued on a vacant possession value, which tends to be quite low. So in the areas that you typically operate, we could double or triple quite easily the value of this commercial building by just simply changing the use of the property. And by maintaining a small element of commercial, especially around that Zone A area of the building, as we discussed before, you can then get a mixed use valuation on this property. And you can take a building that we typically bought for, let's say, 450,000. We spent 150,000 on it, and it'll be valued close to 900 to £1 million. Now, where do you find these deals? I can hear you asking. Now, we typically find these deals by using the usual portals that are out there. So you've got Rightmove and Zoopla Commercial. You can go on there. I'll identify many deals that are on those portals. However, you've got some of these commercial agents and they only use Estate Gazette. which is a great platform for finding properties that may not actually be on Rightmove or Zoopla. We've actually found many over the years just on that website alone. And then we sign up to a lot of the auction houses that operate in the areas that we're actually looking. You know, one of the biggest ones is obviously Allsop, and our current bank job actually came through an Allsop auction. So you'd be surprised what you'll be able to find through your local auction houses. Now, commercial agents are very different than residential agents. Most commercial agents aren't based on a high street. They're actually in serviced offices up and down the country. So it's a lot harder to actually just walk into their office and build some rapport up. Well, here's a tip for you. When you actually meet a commercial agent on site, try to build up that rapport, explain to them, you know, your passion for that property, let them know that you're keen, and let them know that you're in this for the long run and you'll be back again to buy another property. We've done this over the years and befriended many agents who now actually give us a call before a property may even come on the market. This allows us to actually do our research on the building, do our facts and numbers, and we can actually ensure before we even turn up whether the deal will make sense or not. So we'll be one of the first to actually put an offer in before all the other competition. Now, if you found this video interesting, you'll be surprised on the videos that we have on our channel. Be sure to check them out. We have our bank job explaining what we're actually going to be doing to this site. We've got site visits with other developers such as Meg, that property girl, Victoria Tissot, running through some of their live projects. We run through basically the HMO theories, commercial, residential. So if you have found this video useful, you actually probably want to check out our free webinar where we break down how you get involved with commercial to residential. Be sure to hit that bell icon, hit the subscribe button, and we look forward to welcoming you back.